Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Good morning. I don't know.
Good afternoon.
It's actually not even morning.
It just passed, yeah.
And also, who knows what time people are listening to this? It could be morning, night, or somewhere in between. You're just going to let me sink on that one. Okay, thanks for the help, Brett. Brett.
Happy day, Jeff. Happy day.
Happy day. Today is one of those days. Brett is a runner, as many of you know. He runs early in the morning and occasionally, not always, he captures a photo on his run and shares it with the office. And today is one of those days where we all woke up to a photo of the bay, and it was just
sunrise.
So beautiful. Really nice. Thanks for sharing, Brett.
Yeah, it was something I started, if you remember, in COVID. The idea was normally everyone comes in the office in the morning and says, good morning. And we weren't in the office. So I was like out running and sun was rising and I was like, this is pretty. So I just started sending pictures to everybody saying, and at that time we didn't use the Zoom chat. We used WhatsApp at the time, if you remember. And I would just send a picture and say, good morning. And everyone was saying good morning. And it was a nice way to kind of start the day. So I started, and now I have volumes in my phone of every year. And I just take pictures. Sometimes it's here with sunrises. And sometimes if I'm traveling, I usually bring my running shoes and I'll run wherever I am and take some pretty cool pictures there too. So sometimes I share them and sometimes I don't. But yeah, anyway.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you I had a good question today, but I'm going to pivot because what you just said and ask you and call an audible, and that is, what's your favorite place to run?
Yeah, I have several. I don't have one.
You got to pick one, man. The question only calls for one. Just pick one. We're not going to.
You're not going to hold me to it.
We're not going to make you only run there.
All right. Well, I would say the National Mall in DC is pretty cool.
Oh yeah. That's got to be nice.
That's a pretty cool spot, especially if the sun hits just right, So that's a pretty cool spot to run.
I like that the sun is up in this run. There's actually a sun. Usually you start before the sun.
No, right? But yeah, usually if I'm in a place I've traveled, I usually will wait till the sun rises anyway, or it's about to before running in the dark. So that's pretty cool. I got to run in Paris, was pretty cool. So running in a foreign city like that, nobody's out. And so you have the streets to yourself.
Yeah.
So I ran through the Tuileries, I ran through the Louvre, the outside of that whole area, and then the Louvre, and all the way down and stuff by the Eiffel Tower and so on. And there was just nobody there.
It's cool.
So it was kind of cool.
What a great way to see a place it's basically asleep.
Yeah.
Or its residents are asleep.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I have a bunch of favorites,
Awesome.
But anyway, I'll stop there.
No, it was great. Thank you. Well, why don't we introduce our guests? How about that?
Do it.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. Our
think
guest today is, he is. Yeah. He's he already fell asleep. We'll wake him up. Raoul Cantero is a partner at White & Case in Miami, where he leads the firm's disputes practice and serves as the office executive partner. Raoul is board certified in appellate practice, and he's been recognized by Chambers USA as a Band 1 appellate attorney. He's also a former justice on the Florida Supreme Court, where he was one of the youngest justices and the first of Hispanic descent to serve on the court. Over his 40-year career, he has handled more than 400 appeals and represented global clients in complex, high-stakes litigation and cross-border disputes, particularly those involving Latin America. His practice spans commercial litigation, international arbitration, appellate advocacy in both state and federal courts, and he's also a certified arbitrator with the American Arbitration Association and its international division, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Is there anything this guy doesn't do?
Raoul hasn't already accomplished, right.
Welcome.
I don't run in Paris, I'll tell you that.
You don't run in Paris? Do you have a favorite place? Do you run?
Not anymore. I used to play basketball. But, when COVID, when the gyms closed down, that kind of went down the drain. And then when they went back up, my knees were feeling so good from not playing basketball.
Yeah, you realized? Swimming is very easy on the knees. So
Jeff's the swimmer, I'm the runner, so we have land and sea.
Yeah.
Swimming's great for that.
So now, not playing basketball, what do you do for exercise? Because clearly you do, and you take care of yourself, that also take care of your knees along the way. Yeah.
Well, I work out in the gym and bike ride, but mostly I play golf. Walking, I walk. I play 9 holes a weekend and I walk it.
Nice.
And that gets in 10,000 steps, believe it or not.
Yeah. especially in the Miami heat. You'll lose some water.
Yeah, and I chase around my grandchildren. That gives me some exercise.
That'll give you exercise. That's right.
That's exciting. All right, so give us your origin story. Where are you born? Tell us how you got here.
My parents are Cuban born. They during the revolution, right at the beginning, they left to Spain. Mm-hmm. I was born in Spain. 9 months later, we came to Miami. So basically, I'm just about a native of Miami, and we lived here ever since. And then went to college at FSU, law school at Harvard. I had a Fulbright scholarship in Panama for a year. By then I was married. I got married after my first year in law school to my high school sweetheart. We started dating my senior year, her junior year in high school. And we celebrated our 40th anniversary a couple of years ago. So thank you.
Wow.
And then I started practicing law. I clerked for Judge Edward Davis back in the day. Mm-hmm. Actually, little trivia fact, my replacement as law clerk to Judge Davis was Cecilia Altanaga.
Now the chief judge.
Yes. Yeah. And her replacement, who we hired when I was there, was Jimmy Morales.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Commissioner.
Yeah, he was a commissioner for Miami-Dade, and then he was county managers. I think right now he's the county manager
for a long
chief
time,
of staff.
Right? Right. Okay.
Why law school? Like, what led you to that? Did you have that in the family? Was there some moment where or it was something you always wanted to do? Like, what led you to want to go to law school?
Well, law school was almost like a fallback position almost. I went to college wanting to go to law school, but what I wanted to do was go into law enforcement. I started majoring in criminology. That's one of the reasons I went to FSU, because it was one of the few colleges in the country with a criminology school, and it was in state. I didn't want to be too far from my then girlfriend, so that paid off, right? I think the other school of criminology was like Cornell or something in New York, and assuming I got in, I didn't even apply. I only applied to FSU. But I started majoring in criminology. Pretty soon I was talking to practicing lawyers my father would introduce me to, and they said, look, you can always do the criminal stuff later. Major in stuff that's going to help you in law school and as a lawyer. Do some writing, major in English. Business will help you. Math helps you. So I ended up developing like this curriculum for myself. I majored it was a co-major that FSU had in English and business. And on the business side, you did all of the core courses in business, but none of the upper level courses. And then on the English side, you can choose a writing focus or literature focus. And I chose writing. And so I did a lot of writing then. Then I minored in math and philosophy. Back then, math was a big subject on the LSAT. Right. And then in philosophy, I took all of the like logic and reasoning courses. So basically it ended up being like a 4-year prep for the LSAT.
LSATs,
yeah, that's amazing. And then you got into an upstart law school.
Yeah.
It was just fledgling.
In a cold, dark place.
Is that a dad joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it's good. It's good though.
Harvard Law.
Yeah. Harvard.
I've heard of that.
I've heard it. Yeah.
They call it the University of Miami of the North. Up there.
There's a lot of Harvard law grads down here.
Yeah.
There are a lot. Yeah. It's impressive.
It's a plague. I know.
No, it's impressive. I mean, there's a lot of impressive lawyers that started down here in grade school that went on to law school at Harvard, and we know one that's sitting on the Supreme Court right now. So it's just it's impressive.
And as you probably know, there are a lot of lawyers that now have come down that didn't even grow up here,
right?
That want to come down.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Them and everybody else.
Yeah, it's becoming a problem.
It is, right.
But by the time I got to law school, I wasn't quite sure I wanted to be a lawyer anymore.
Yeah.
Because I loved writing so much, and I majored in fiction writing.
Oh, yeah?
And so I'm like, maybe I want to be a writer. And so my third year paper in law school was actually a novel about a lawyer, about a law student representing some indigent people in the projects, and some finding out fraud that had occured in the projects.
What have you ever published? Is it published? Writing?
I still have it there. It's very
publishing it or dusting it off? Or?
No, I go back and read it and I cringe.
Would you give yourself a grade? Do you give yourself a grade when you read it?
I'm happy my professor gave me an A, so I'm happy.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have done the same.
That'd be
thing.
interesting though to go to dust it off and like see if a publisher would. It's probably better than you think it is.
Maybe too.
We're always a little right, but I would. Man, that'd be interesting.
I hope it happens.
Yeah, I do too. I think it'd be interesting.
The seed here today. That's amazing. So you're not sure if you want to go. You go to law school, but you're not sure you want to be a lawyer. And what did something?
Well, then I had the Fulbright scholarship. Was actually in creative writing. So we were down in Panama for a year. I was doing independent study. I was writing in the morning, and in the afternoons I would read 2 hours of Latin American literature and 2 hours of Latin American history. Just kind of a self-study program, and kind of as a tangential point. That's when like things started blowing up in Panama, like really.
Right. With Noriega.
With Noriega, but before the U.S. invaded. So this was 87. Noriega invaded 89. But that's when all the demonstrations started and everything. And a good friend of mine that we had made in the building, he was involved in politics. And he said, hey, come on down and we're going to go demonstrate and things will go down the street. So I go, yeah, sure. And then the paramilitary troops came and they started throwing tear gas and arresting people. Yeah. And that was in probably May of 1987. And then for the rest of the year, it was like that. Demonstrations, arrests, things like that. And for me, it was fascinating.
Wow, yeah.
I called it, I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie, The Year of Living Dangerously.
Yeah, sure. I've never seen it, but I'm familiar.
Yeah, there's a movie. So that's what I called it, The Year of Living Dangerously. And my wife wanted to get back to Miami. She's like, what are we doing here? But I did a lot of writing there. And then when I got back, I started at a law firm, and I went to a small law. I didn't go to like a big firm at all. I said, let me go to a small firm where I'm going to have time to write on the side. So I was writing and practicing law, and
still
then
fiction, still writing fiction,
doing short stories, working on my a novel, and then I started having kids. And we had our first child, and I said, I've got a choice here. I can do two things. I can be a lawyer and a writer. I can be a lawyer and a father. I can be a father and a writer, but I can't be a lawyer, a father, and a writer. Yeah. And so I said, well, I'm going to stop the writing part. But in the meantime, I started in the firm. They started handing me all the appeals because this firm, I'm sure you remember Dorno and Zeter back then. So when I got there, all the litigators were former state prosecutors. And if you know state prosecutors or even federal prosecutors, they love going to court. Right? They love going to court.
They don't like writing.
They hate to write. They hate to write. And so it was like, give it to Mikey, give it to Raoul. He'll do it. So
he writes anything.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
As we started getting appeals, I would do the appeals, and then as the firm grew, I just became the go-to person for the appeals, and we ended up having an insurance practice group, a criminal defense group with Fred Schwartz. We had a commercial litigation group. We had a zoning group, and we had appeals from all of those. So I would be doing all kinds of appeals, and I really had the privilege of working on all those appeals and doing oral arguments, even from an early stage in my career. And I kind of got out the writing bug that way.
Yeah, you were able to.
Yeah, and I still do. I mean, I still love to write, and I love teaching my associates about writing. We're very focused in our group on the written work product and doing the best job possible. And we even have little competitions. And so I was able to kind of get out my writing bug through appellate practice.
I'm glad of the three options that you selected one that included dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a father and a lawyer instead of just lawyer and writer. That would have been, that would have been the wrong choice. But and writing, and then from there you went direct to the Supreme Court, right?
Yes.
Florida Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Appointed by Jeb Bush in 2002, is that
2002,
right?
yeah.
So you went, because that's not a typical path for that court in particular, right? Most of the judges there come from another court, or they're judges first.
Both, it's both.
Oh, is there a good mix? Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix. When I got there, I was the third justice who had not been a judge yet.
Oh, okay.
Charlie Wells,
right,
and Fred Lewis from Miami,
right.
But the first Hispanic.
Yes, yeah.
And how was that transition? Tell us about that transition, and if you don't mind, maybe from the start, like when you got that first call.
Yeah, how did it even become possible?
How did this happen?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, even applying was a thing because my wife wanted to stay in Miami, and it wasn't on my radar. And Major Harding, justice on the court, in April of 2002, announced his retirement as of September. And, I wasn't very involved in the appellate practice section and the appellate bar in Florida. And people started telling me, hey, Raoul, you should apply. So I told my wife, hey, I don't know, people are telling me to apply. And they're like, no way. And so I said, okay, fine. But then, more people would tell me and more people would tell me. And I said, look, this is serious. People are asking me. And she's like, I don't know. So I started praying. I said, God, please give me a sign. If this is of you, let me know and I'll apply. And I said, it's got to be very clear because I don't want to move my family if it's not God's will. So I pray. I said, this high school friend of mine who I haven't talked to in many years has to call me and tell me, hey, you should apply.
Yeah.
And I had gone to a Catholic retreat over the weekend. I get back to work Monday morning, and I had a message from him on my phone. And I called him back and he said, hey, I think you should.
No.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Wait, so when you were praying, you were thinking of one specific friend?
I mean, that is.
And that friend called you?
Yes.
That's incredible.
And I told this to my wife, and she's like, okay.
Okay, fine.
That's checkmate. We're going to have to appeal.
Right.
We're going to have to apply.
That's a true higher power. But
yeah.
How old were the kids at this time?
12, 9, and 7.
So old enough to know right. Yeah.
So my 12-year-old knew exactly, what was going to happen. My 9 and 7-year-olds were like, oh, this should be fun, right?
Right.
So I got nominated.
Right.
One of 5 to get nominated. And then I interviewed July 1st of 2002. On July 9th, I get a call at 6:30 in the morning. My wife answers the phone. There's no cell phones per se back then. So she answers the phone. She says, it's Governor Bush. I'm in bed. Like, we're both in bed sleeping. It's Governor Bush. I'm like, there's no way.
Right. That's my friend.
This is my
joking.
brother-in-law.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like a big jokester. And I answer the phone. Yeah, what?
Right.
Yeah,
it's like the movie, when that happens in the movie, but that
exactly
really happened. Oh, my God.
He says, hung up on him.
He says, Raoul, it's Jeb Bush. He just says, Jeb Bush. He said, hi, Governor, how are you? And then I started kind of like feeling out to see is this my brother-in-law or Jeb Bush? And in fact, it happened to be Jeb Bush, yes.
Oh,
he said, how would you like to be on the Florida Supreme Court?
That's cool.
And then we went up, we took our whole family up to Tallahassee, and the next day was the announcement.
Oh my God. So it happened
That's exciting.
Quick.
Very
after
quick.
Obviously I'm sure the process was pretty detailed. There was a lot to do to apply.
Yeah.
Right. There's like a physical application, right? Back then.
Very detailed.
And back then it wasn't online, right?
Correct.
Like
Probably,
it was probably paper.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you have to deliver that or have it delivered, right?
Yeah, in copies.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I'm sure that was a difficult process, but it seems like it went pretty quickly. Once you had the interview,
It was a difficult process, but I actually did it I put together my application in a week because by the time I decided, the deadline was a week coming after that. Yeah.
Wow.
Your friend should have called you sooner.
Right. What does your friend, did you tell him at that moment when you got the phone call?
Yeah.
Hey, I thought of this and you were the deciding factor, basically.
Yeah.
So your friend is basically God's vehicle. Is that how
inadvertently.
It works? Yeah,
inadvertently.
Wow. That's amazing.
A story that I tell about the whole process that I like to tell to law students and even college students and high school students about the whole process was
great.
2 years before I got appointed, they asked me to apply to be governor's general counsel. My wife wasn't as opposed to that because it was 2 years or whatever, and we'll come back. So I applied to be Governor Bush's general counsel because Carol Licco, who was the general counsel at the time, was coming back to Miami to return to her partnership at Hogan and Hartson at the time. And so I interviewed for it. I didn't get it. And I find out later who gets the appointment is this guy named Charles Kennedy. I go, now, why is this guy more qualified than I am to be Governor General Counsel, right? Why on earth would he get this job? And I read his credentials. He went to Yale Law School. He was a state representative. Then he was a U.S. congressman for 8 years. I'm like, okay, all right, he's more qualified.
Right.
And so the next time I was in Tallahassee, I went to the general counsel's office after I think I had an argument in the Florida Supreme Court. I went to the office, unaccounted for, unannounced, and I asked if he was there, and he said, yeah, he's there. And they let me in, and I went over, and I told him, look, you probably don't know this, but I applied for the job that you have, and I didn't get it. And I know you are the best qualified person for this job. And so whatever you need from me, if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. It's great to meet you. I just wanted to congratulate you.
Wow.
And so, okay, great. Thank you very much. We talked for like 45 minutes. He gave me his card. I gave him mine. Flash forward 2 years, I get nominated to the court, and I go to the interview room with the governor in the governor's office. And guess who's sitting beside the governor?
Sure.
Charles Kennedy. And that's why I tell people, look, whenever you get a chance, create relationships. Yeah. And it's not a quid pro quo. It's just you being friendly to people.
Yep.
You never know when that's going to come back. And if it doesn't matter because you've made a friend. But sometimes it does.
Yep. And it's a marathon, right?
Yeah, it's a marathon.
There may not be anything that you get out of that relationship, maybe ever, other than a relationship and a friendship.
Right.
And you have to think about it that way.
Correct, yeah.
But like you said, you never know. You walk into the room and there it is.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What made you do that? Why'd you go to see him? Was this mere curiosity or what?
No, I just thought, hey, this guy's really qualified. I want to meet him and just say that I think he was the best qualified. And I was there like across the street at the Florida Supreme Court, and I had some time before my flight, and I said, let me go congratulate this guy.
So it's not a little, it's a lot. Humility. Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know what? I want to shake the guy's hand like he did, good for him. And I'm sure maybe you thought, our paths, maybe they'll cross at some point, right? He's the governor's office. I do a lot of appeals, like you never know. Mm-hmm. And there you go. Yeah. It's a nice relationship.
I certainly didn't think I was going to be applying to the Supreme Court in 2 years.
Right. So you stay on the court for 6 years.
Yeah.
And then your wife said, no, we need to come back or what?
Yeah, well.
The kids, more like.
The kids were like,
it was really the kids.
Yeah, we're done.
The precipitating event, I mean, the kids were clamoring to come back to Miami by then, 6 years there. They missed their family. And, Tallahassee's at least in 2002 to 2008, it was a very different community than Miami. It wasn't very international, cosmopolitan, anything like that. So I tell people my kids didn't realize they were Hispanic until they got to Tallahassee.
Yeah, I bet.
Because, in Miami, it's not an issue.
Right.
They have all kinds of friends. But in Tallahassee, people kept reminding them that they were Hispanic. First I had to explain to them what a Hispanic was because they
didn't even right.
Yeah, they didn't even know that.
Register.
Yeah,
wow.
Telling me why are they saying go back to Cuba? Why are they saying get on a raft?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean they would get off these that I wasn't subjected to at the office, right?
Sure.
Because people were respecting me and things like
Supreme
that.
Court justice,
right?
Yeah.
My wife's telling me, they're not having that same experience that you are.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
So we're going through this at the time, and then. In 2007, 2008, that little period, my daughter got sick with some kind of stomach ailment that took a while to diagnose, but then we finally diagnosed it as a tumor in her adrenal gland.
Oh, no.
That needed to get taken out. And so we came to Miami for the surgery and all that, and that's what we said, it's time to come back. We need family around. And thank God my daughter's 100%, never suffered any consequences from that. But it was kind of like the precipitating event. We said, let's get going. And I had to do it. It was either then or I was going to have to wait for another 4 years, I thought, in my mind, because 2 years hence, I was going to be chief because of the tradition on the court. The last person who hasn't been chief yet becomes chief. And so in 2 years, I was going to be chief justice. That would last for 2 years. So I didn't want to leave in the middle of my term.
Right.
And so I would have to go within the next 2 years. And if I waited another year, then my son would be going into his junior year in high school. And so I said, look, if we're going to move, we might as well move him now so he can start making new friends.
Right.
And so I was able to get the high school I went to accept him there. And he loved it. He started as a sophomore and he loved it. But that's why we said, not only do I have to move, but we probably need to do it soon.
How did that feel giving that up? You're at the, in theory, the pinnacle, right? You're on the Florida Supreme Court and I'm going to just walk away from this. I understand the family obviously was most important to you, but how did you struggle with that decision or?
No, once I made it, I said, look, I'm not going to look back. I'm looking forward. I was focused on finding a place to work in Miami. Let me focus on that. And, I was blessed to be on the court for 6 years. So it was a great blessing. There are things about it that I loved. And then there's things about practicing that I missed, like the camaraderie, the collaboration with the team, just the being part of the bar. In Tallahassee, it was great, but everybody knew me as Justice Cantero.
Right.
In Miami, they knew me as Raoul.
Right.
And I like to be Raoul. And then sometimes there was a disconnect with people because people would call me Justice Cantero, but I acted like Raoul. I didn't necessarily act like I was 42 years old to 48 by the time I got there. So I was acting like a 42 to 48-year-old, not like a 65-year-old justice, So I coached high school basketball when I was there. I was the head coach for the JV football team in the very small Catholic school. And I would act like a coach, And Andy was like, you can't do that. You're a justice. I go, on the court, I'm a coach. I'm not a justice. I'm
on this
Coach
court.
Cantero.
On this court.
Yeah, this court. That's
Right.
On the basketball court, I am a coach.
That's funny.
And so I would, yell at the refs and things, get technicals called against me and things like that. And and the people in Tallahassee are like, wait a minute, who is this guy?
Yeah. No one's going to argue with you, of course. They don't want to go across with a Florida Supreme Court justice. Can you talk a little bit, give us a little bit of insight in terms of because obviously many of us here in the room, of course, but listeners are not Supreme Court justices, but never a judge either. Mm-hmm. What's it like in terms of the prep, in terms of, the work behind the scenes, getting to that time at oral argument or issuing decisions, that if you can give us a little insight or give the listener a little insight into that, would be great.
Sure. Back then, the workload on the court was huge. Mm-hmm. Now, if you see, comparatively speaking, they don't have any cases.
Really?
They have, if you look at any given oral argument week, we had oral arguments 1 week a month. They have maybe 3 arguments during that week. We would have 20.
Wow. What do you think that's attributable to? Yeah.
I think they're accepting fewer cases. Yeah. And I think there are probably fewer death penalties than there were. When I was there, we would have, of the 20 cases in a given week, 10 would be death penalty cases.
Oh, wow.
And in death penalty cases, we would give the parties 100 pages per brief instead of 50 pages. So it's almost like 2 cases per case of reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of the time was taken up with death penalty cases. Then there are the non-death penalty criminal cases, and then there are the administrative, and then there's the civil, and then there's the attorney discipline, judicial discipline rules. And so all these kinds of cases, and I would have 3 law clerks given to me, and so I would have to hire those every year. One of them was my permanent law clerk to add stability, and then 2 others would come in and rotate either 1 or 2 years. So every chambers was in charge of a certain of the arguments that are going to be held. You're determined to be the lead justice before the argument, before you even know what the vote is. You're the lead justice on a particular case. And so we would have the responsibility for putting out a bench memo, what we called an OA summary, oral argument summary, to all the chambers to explain the case, what the arguments were, and then the law clerk would give their own take on the case and recommendation. Sometimes the justices would have influence on what the recommendation was. I did not. I just say, you recommend what you think. We may not agree with it. I may not agree with it, but you recommend what you think. And then, so sometimes the law clerk on the cases I was assigned to would consult with me and, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So we would prepare for the argument. Everybody obviously would read the briefs. They would also read the OA summaries before the argument. Depending on, your predilections, you may read some of the cases, some of the order under review, things like that. Maybe we would have cases in conflict. So maybe you'd read the 2 opinions that conflict. And then we'd go to oral argument. And then after the argument, after that day, we would conference those 4 cases in a conference room and then have a tentative decision. And whether or not you were in the majority, you would draft the majority opinion.
Oh, really? Usually. Even if this is the assigned judge, the lead judge on that case would draft the opinion, even if you're not in the majority.
Right. And you would just draft it as a per curiam opinion.
Right.
You wouldn't put your name on it. And then you could do the dissent or concurring opinion. And there were rare cases. I don't even know if they ever occurred when I was there. Like if you said, I don't know how you idiots can write this opinion. I can't write an opinion like that. You go ahead and do it. That never happened to me because by the time it gets to the court, reasonable people could disagree. A lot of times two different district courts of appeal disagreed. So there was a lot of them were close questions, so it could go either way. I remember one case where I was the lead. We had a decision. It was a 4-3 vote for a particular outcome. Then I go back to my chambers, my clerk and I start writing, and we decide, you know what? I think the other side's right.
Oh, well. The three. So you switched?
I switched.
Oh,
I ended up drafting the other way. So we still had a 4-3 majority, but it was the other way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Close calls.
So that can happen as well.
Change vote, amazing. Right? Yeah. So it's a preliminary vote after oral argument. You all sit in a room, you come up with here's how we vote in terms of general outcome, right? Not specifics, not opinions. And then, but it can change after that until the opinion is issued. Yeah,
and even sometimes you discuss what kind of an opinion you're writing, because like my philosophy was, and it wasn't everybody's, and it's still not everybody's, is I would rather get a unanimous opinion for a more narrow ruling than a majority opinion for a broader rule, even if I would subscribe to that broader rule. Because I thought that the public should see us as unanimous as much as possible. So sometimes we would discuss that, like, I'm thinking about doing this, and maybe a justice would say, well, I can't go that far. I'll do this. And I say, okay, I can write it that way. And you kind of hash it back and forth. At conference, you would go like in order of seniority in talking about the case, and then the Chief Justice would go last. Now, sometimes that kind of got mixed up where the senior judge just would talk and say something, then the next justice, and then, well, the senior justice is responding to that, and the next justice responding to that, and I would be like, I'm at the end of the line almost. I was penultimate, and I would say, hey, can I say something? Are we going to go around? Because I actually have something to say.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
So you went from there, you went to, I could stay there, but I figured you're probably tired of talking about that.
That's fine. We'll go there, but I have sort of a question about that. But let's go to his. No, let's go to his time, and then I'll go back.
Because you then moved from there to private practice, and so tell us about that transition for you. I mean, was that difficult? Now you're on the other side, and you were just there a minute ago.
Right.
How was your first oral argument back?
I remember my first. It was a hearing. It was a post-trial hearing in front of Judge Altanaga. And it had been a $24 million verdict against an insurance company for bad faith based on an accident, a boating accident that had occurred out in Biscayne Bay. And it was based on the fact that the insurance company knew or should have known that the boat was in bad shape, something like that. And so they had a verdict. They came to me for the post-trial motions and then the appeal. So I argued it was a motion for new trial, and it was the first time that technology was starting to be used in the courtroom where they had the monitors up and everything. And I said, well, I'm going to use some of the exhibits for trial and put them up on the monitor. I had never done that before. And I said, I'm just going to have to dive in because this is how things are done now. So I was very stressed and prepared for the argument, and we got the new trial, and then the case settled after that. But asking me about
you won, by the way.
We won.
Right, so you won your motion. We won. I just want to make that clear for the listeners.
We won the motion. I mean, and that was Altanaga who said that she was wrong in excluding some evidence or doing something. So she was very humble in the way she accepted that she had done something mistaken. And then in terms of oral argument, I remember my first oral argument in the Florida Supreme Court was a year later. Somebody had pointed out to me a provision in the Florida Constitution that prohibited a statewide elected official from practicing before his prior agency for 2 years after leaving. And I'm like, ooh, boy.
Does that apply?
Does that apply? Right. So, number one, am I statewide elected official?
No,
right?
Not really, right?
I mean, exactly, right. I mean, I stand for merit retention,
right?
Statewide. Now, is this an agency? And so I filed a motion for the court to determine whether I could do it. And I said, I don't think it applies. This is really a statewide elected official, but if it does apply, I would think that it's unconstitutional. Because every other judge in the state can argue before the prior court within 2 years.
Right.
If you're a circuit court judge, you're not elected statewide, so you can apply. If you're a district court judge, you're not elected statewide, so you can argue before the DCA. So it would only apply to Supreme Court justices. And so I filed this motion. The other side files a response. We don't care. We just want to go to oral argument.
Yeah,
let them do it.
So they consented, right? I was wondering if they were going to. But
their consent, if it did apply, their consent wouldn't matter.
Right, that's true. Right. It's really not up to them.
It's not up to them, but they wanted it. I think
the court also has an interest. Hey, that could be me at some point too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone on the bench, right?
So you went from appellate lawyer to Florida Supreme Court justice, back to appellate lawyer. Mm-hmm. Is there anything during your time as a Florida Supreme Court justice that altered your approach after the fact you didn't do before? That you kind of changed after. Maybe obviously maturity and that we all do that as lawyers and people, but is there anything specific that you learned sitting there? That candidly, the young lawyers that may be listening to this, tips for them that may benefit them.
Brett Amron, great, excellent.
But is there anything that stands out for you?
What I run across the most now is advocacy that is too strident, that doesn't recognize its own weaknesses, and it doesn't appear to be to the court as a reasonable argument. And so I try to be, and I tell my associates and partners, we need to be the reasonable people in the room so that a judge can just take our brief and cut and paste it into an opinion.
Right.
And sometimes that means that there's arguments you don't make. Sometimes that means you have to acknowledge cases or facts that hurt you and then say why it's not dispositive.
Right.
But I think recognizing the weaknesses and then addressing them is something that's very important and that most lawyers don't do. They just kind of ignore it and wait for, if the other side's not going to find it.
Yeah. I think, by the way, that skill is undervalued outside of court as well. Just in having ordinary dialogue with friends or debates or disagreements is recognizing the merit in the other side's position when you're having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
I love that. On a related topic, is there any advice? I would love to hear your pitch to young lawyers as to why they should clerk. You had, 6 years with clerks, and so
when I clerked for a judge myself.
And you clerked yourself, exactly.
And that's what actually wanted me to eventually become a judge. I wasn't thinking Florida Supreme Court. Yeah, clerking. Not only because I enjoyed clerking, but the judge that I worked for, Judge Davis, was just such a humble, down-to-earth, humorous man. The way he ran his courtroom, the way he treated the lawyers was with immense respect. And even when he was telling, he would be the nicest person I've ever seen in denying an extension or a continuance. He's, Judge, we need a continuance. We've got to do this, that. And the judge would say, I am very confident in your ability to be able to prepare because you're such a good lawyer. You're going to be ready. So what is he going to say to that?
Right, yeah. No, Judge, I'm not a good lawyer. I'm really not that good.
Yeah. You overstate my qualifications, Judge. Yeah.
So I would, clerking for a judge, it gives you that one-on-one mentorship that you may not ever receive. Sometimes you do, but it's not guaranteed by somebody who's experienced. You get to see lawyers in action in your court, especially I could have gone to clerk at the 11th Circuit, but it was in St. Petersburg, and clerking here. And I thought I had a better experience that I heard other lawyers would get in an appellate court because I got to see lawyers on a daily basis. I got to see trials, and I got to see them in my community and see, these are the good lawyers, these are the not so good lawyers. You get to learn what to do and what not to do. And you create relationships with the lawyers.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this is getting a look behind the curtain as a young, as an up and coming lawyer that helps you when you become the lawyer.
Yeah,
and go argue wherever that might be.
It's like the difference between you go to a fishing class, right, and a fisherman's telling you, well, you got to throw in the line like this, and you got to use this kind of bait. What if you had the opportunity to talk to the fish? What if the fish is telling you, this is how you catch me?
Yeah.
This is what I eat.
Yeah.
I love that. I think any job
that's a great.
I know. Yeah.
That's so good.
Like even as a prosecutor, any job that puts you in and near courtrooms and judges at an early age is super beneficial because it just exposes you and allows you to appreciate that these are human beings. Like people think of judges as these sort of, superhumans but if you understand the way judges think and you get familiar with the court, and I know as prosecutors, you're hanging out and you have that time in between and everything else, just familiarity with that process is so useful.
And it also teaches you the mores of the practice of law,
right?
The traditions, how people comport with themselves, how they act toward each other, how a judge acts toward them and they act toward the judge, kind of language you use, how you speak, things like that.
Yeah, those types of things are sort of under-taught, and it's just so important, right? Before we wrap up, I just wanted to go back to one place, and that is your wife, who has been with you since the very beginning, moved around. Is she also a lawyer, or can you tell us a little bit about your wife and the because we know that she's really...
As with all of us.
Right? Yes. The brains behind the operation, right, if you will.
Yeah. She was a school teacher for a long time. Then she taught at the English Center, teaching adults English, and also taught immigration courses for adults. And then we're up in Tallahassee, was basically, home mother, taking care of the kids, and now she takes care of, still takes care of the kids, even though they're adults.
And the grandkids.
And then the 5 grandchildren.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
2 of them are living at our house, by the way.
Oh wow.
Man.
That must be fun.
That's fun, though.
It's great. It's great. My daughter and her husband are living with us because they're refurbishing their house. So I tried to pay off the Coral Gables building department so they wouldn't issue permits.
Go slower.
Yes.
What a treat that must be.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, amazing.
Congratulations. This is amazing. I can't get enough of this, but
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
my
Raoul.
pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, fantastic. If you enjoyed this episode, please show us some love. Give us a 5-star review and share the show with your friends and subscribe.
Thank you,
We'll
Christina.
see you next time. Raoul, thank you so much. Christina, thank you, Brett. Always.
Thanks for having me.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit bastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Bast Amron.